On a starry night under a three-quarters moon, the winter solstice took place at precisely 10:27 on Thursday, December 21st, 2023. At that moment, the North Pole reached its maximum tilt from the sun, although there was no practical way to observe it. Sunset was 5 hours earlier, about the time I finished a late afternoon hike on the Johns Mountain and Cowan Falls trails, my last of the autumn season. As befits endings, the outing was tinged with melancholy. The festiveness of the glorious autumn season had passed, as had the lushness of summertime, which followed the invigorating warmth of spring. Time and seasons passed too quickly, as Robert Frost noted in October, when he hoped that autumn would begin the hours of this day slow, make the day seem to us less brief. But time slows for no one, not even for Robert Frost. We too wish that autumn might be less brief, so that its clear light, cool nights, and colorful foliage might linger. But time doesn't linger. It is remorseless, passing too quickly, no matter how much we long for moderation. There comes a day each autumn when we notice the rich palette of leaf color, in advance paid in yellow, red, gold, and copper. We think it's just a down payment with a bigger dividend to come, but the peak moment catches us by surprise, somehow eluding our full appreciation because we think tomorrow might be even better. We never perceive the peak until it's past. A day or two later, it becomes obvious that we're on the backside. We exclaim, "Oh, I missed it," and pledge to pay closer attention next year. Science calculates solstices to the minute, but no man can predict the moment when autumn color will peak. In recent decades, the peak has happened around November 10 in northwest Georgia. It wasn't always this way. Back in the 1980s and 90s, autumn seemed to climax in late October, but the 2000s have been different, so we adjusted our expectations. In 2021, the peak happened on November 10th, as anticipated, but then everything went haywire. In 2022, it was on October 29th, nearly 2 weeks early. To walk the glorious woods that day was to mistakenly think that the best was yet to come, perhaps days or even a week away. How tantalizing! A few days later, when we perceived that the peak had passed unawares, it was quite a letdown. The same thing happened in 2023. When I hiked the Johns Mountain Trail on November 18th, 2023, color was 3 weeks past peak. Oh, a few candles flickered feebly in autumn's dim light, mainly smilax leaves, a few holdout red maples, and a copse of yellow poplars in the dark and rocky ravine below Cowan Falls. These were sad vestiges of what had been, as forlorn as remnant tinsel on a discarded Christmas tree. The hardwood forest on the broad summit of Johns Mountain that day announced the end of autumn more accurately than any calendar or astronomer's pronouncement that the official end would come 33 days hence. When I next hiked the trail on November 30th, yellow leaves still clung to a few poplars in the copse below the falls. A thicket of witch hazel offered the only other patch of festive color, its flowers gathered in petite yellow tufts like gaily twisted confetti. Witch hazel blooms in late November, the final plant to do so each calendar year. The end of the day, the end of a season, near the end of a year, always triggers melancholy thoughts and feelings. The sun sets early, the leafless hardwood trees stand starkly against the sky, and the mountain wears the drab garb of winter. Gray trees and rocks bear washed-out turquoise splotches of lichens. Brown leaves freshly on the forest floor flame russet under the setting sun, and the immensity of the newly dormant landscape subdues occasional patches of green fern and pine, mountain laurel and wintergreen. As my footsteps crunched through leaves 6 hours before the winter solstice on December 21st, my thoughts turned to the heroes of Cowan Falls, a special education class led by Calhoun High School teacher Amelia Hester. Every few years from the late 1990s through 2011, Miss Hester invited me to lead her class on a field trip here. Then the invitation stopped. Too late, I learned that she had passed away in 2015. Another peak had passed, and I'll never get another chance to appreciate Miss Hester guiding her heroes. On my December 21st hike, it was winter on Johns Mountain, even though astronomers reckoned that hours of autumn remained. To the southwest, the pale sun dropped in the pearlescent sky and then set meekly behind Taylor's Ridge. On the morrow, the long, gradual progression to summer's solstice would begin. But autumn doesn't end with leaf fall, nor with the winter solstice, at least here in northwest Georgia. It ends in late March, when the sap rises in the hardwoods on a warm spring afternoon. It's then that those few tree species that hold onto their brown leaves through winter finally release them. American beech and black oak and chalk maple yield last year's foliage, marking the final event of autumn and the conclusion of the old year. With that in mind, I wrote The Last Day of Fall. In October, when the last aster blooms, when straggling warblers meekly pass through, we carry our blanket from chest to bedroom, then open the damper and clean the flue. In November, when colors come down, when kinglet and nuthatch sojourn again, a cricket churrs its last lonely sound, mourning the bite of winter's first wind. In December, when the flaming low sun dispenses its light on the forest floor, of green there is little, then less, then none, so we place a wreath on our front door, then wait until March, when the last autumn leaf is teased from the oak by a warm zephyr thief. Thank you for watching this Georgia Backroads program.